We just got the weekly insurance registration numbers for Chinese electric vehicles, and we can see that something really special happened for NIO. So we just had 5,300 deliveries over the past week, so the first week of July or week 27 of the year. And that represents a very interesting growth in terms of, what the normal first week of the month is. You can see that I've written here roughly the estimates for the number of insurance registrations for each month, for the beginning of each month over the past year, the past 6-7 months. And you can see that, it's essentially never been this high. I do believe this is an all-time high if I didn't miss any strong week by early last year. But yeah, other than that, I do believe this is the best ever first week of a month. So this is really interesting. Would love to see this kind of, numbers for now onwards for at least a few months, just to see that it's not a one-off. But I do think there's huge possibilities for that, and we can actually see that be on the until let's say June, we have been at around on average of let's say 3,400, but now we are averaging, let's say, over the past 3 months closer to 4,600 cars. So I definitely think this is a growing case for NIO. We can see that others, like for example Xpeng had 1,800 now, and they also used to be strong. You can see for Xpeng, like last month also, they started slow and then they finished with 3,200. And essentially this kind of fall off for for example Tesla, you can see that Tesla had 14,500 last week and now 6,500, so less than half. And even LiAuto, which I have been praising a lot, and even BYD, which been growing very fast, you can see that they have a significant drop off, and that's that's not a problem. That's quite normal at the first week of the month. But the interesting part for me is the fact that if you look at, for example, this graph, you can see NIO, which is the green, Xpeng the blue, LiAuto the gray, and this is the last 7 weeks of delivery trend or insurance registration in China. And look at the sharp fall off from like LiAuto. So from 13,000 thereabouts to 8,000. And now the interesting part is, NIO. Look at the equivalent drop off for NIO. It's not as much, in percentage terms of, drop. And for Xpeng, it's a bit more sharper than NIO at least. But yeah, so this definitely, shows that NIO is, now the trend is at over the past 7 weeks, it's sitting fairly, at around 5,000 cars. And that would mean that right now we are on average doing roughly 22,000 cars a month. This is the pace that if they manage to hold this, especially if we lose these couple of, let's say less good of a weeks. These were 3,500 and 3,400, and that would have been, let's have a quick look. That would be, the first 2 weeks of June. I said the first 2 full weeks of June. So if next week's come in, above, let's say 4,500, I do think we have a really strong case, because in that case you would have 4,500 plus 5,300. That's almost 10,000 in the first 2 weeks. And then we know that traditionally the second half of the month is much stronger. So let's say 30% stronger at the bare minimum in this case. That would be another 13,000 cars. So that would give us around 23 to 24,000 cars. So I think, this is starting to look really interesting, because my own expectation was 21,000 cars, but I didn't expect the first week to be this strong. So let's still hold it at 21,000 for July, but I do think, if next week comes in at, as I said, above 4,500 or around there, I think I will revise this number to 22,500, maybe 23,000. So and there's also the interesting fact that the Chinese GDP growth is expected to be around 5.2%, and a lot of data coming out of China seems to point to the fact that the economy is rebounding and is great for the consumer. We know that the lithium carbonate price is still hovering above these levels, which is very low. This is definitely important for essentially every electric car manufacturer, and we should see this affect the, let's say, earnings in a good way. And going to the earnings estimations, you see that the Q2, I think NIO usually have a quite late earnings report after the latest quarter finished. I think it's more than a month left, actually maybe 6 to 7 weeks left. So it's usually, you know, by let's say by end of August. That's when I expect NIO to have their earnings. But this number in the revenue is from the upper end of their guidance on the previous quarter. But I do think they have a good shot on beating that because they beat the delivery by a few percentage. So I think it's possible at the bare minimum to come in at the highest level, maybe even beat to some degree. I would love to see the other sales performing good. If other sales come in, you know, close to this number, I would be really, really happy. The other sales in the yellow chart, you can see that yeah, it's kind of slowly but surely going up. And right now we are almost at the level of, you know, run rate of 850 to almost $1 billion in other sales, and that would represent around 10% of NIO's earnings on a yearly run rate. But yeah, so I do expect, like, you know, if we get 23,000 cars in June, so if I should increase it, which is likely now, let's say we have 25,000 in July, so that's already almost 48,000 cars in 2 months. I remember that last time in the last earnings in Q2 we had deliveries of 57,000 or thereabouts. So if we have 48,000 in June and July, yeah, that's a really strong run rate. And you would assume that, let's say August comes in on 25, September 25, that's 50 there, and 23 in let's say in July, sorry. So that's what? That's probably 73,000 cars. And my own expectations was 70. And to be honest, now, beginning I was kind of, you know, maybe I'm a bit too optimistic because, you know, at the time I did this kind of estimations, it was still not in the, you know, I think we were had roughly 1 month left of Q2. And that was, you know, to me that felt like maybe a tad of optimistic. But looking at, again, these numbers, you know, if we get 23 plus 25 plus 25, that's 73,000 cars. And we know that Envoy is supposed to be, you know, start to be deliveries in September. And September month would mean that's still in, so that's the last month of Q3. So even if you have 5,000 cars in September from Envoy, I'm not sure if that's realistic or not. I have to dig further for that information. But that would, you know, put us at 73 plus 5, that's 78,000 cars. So I had a comment on the comment section on one of my last videos on NIO, and someone pointed out the fact that, you know, maybe this is actually a bit too conservative. And to be honest, I lean towards that, you know, that could be the case. But right now, let's stick with this 70,000 for a couple of other weeks. If I see that, you know, nothing unusual happens in you know, the upcoming 2 weeks, and we see that the July deliveries are pointing, you know, when we get close to the third week of July to, let's say, 23,000, I will revise these numbers up. But yeah, so the things start, in my opinion, to look really great. And, you know, again, NIO is just, in my opinion, now looking severely undervalued, so long as they continue to perform at this level. If NIO, you know, if they don't have a, let's say, sharp drop off in terms of deliveries, for example, if you go back to 2023 and look at the green bars, and you can see, you know, the year started fairly okay, and then this absolute like carnage in, you know, March, April, May, and then some rebound in June until, you know, July, when things got better. If we get anything like this, you know, with the group bars offset, obviously, you know, let's say that the August number, September, October disappoints, yeah, then again the stock shouldn't do that much better. But if they continue to perform at this level, I mean, again, it doesn't make sense to me, you know, a fast growing company at $9.5 billion in market capitalization, and a company that, you know, is supposed to have a realistic run rate at the bare minimum $2.83 billion revenue per quarter by end of this year. There's a room for, you know, almost $4 billion a quarter of revenue for NIO by end of this year or mid to late next year. So I struggle to see why this stock, you know, and it might be the case that, you know, the net loss is maybe a bit too high right now, but they still have, you know, $6.3 billion cash on hand. And I do believe, like, as the deliveries keep continuing at this pace, we should see the net loss going down quite a bit. some people point to the fact that the Onvo brand is gonna have its own, I think it's Onvo, or maybe it was Firefly that's supposed to have the separate power swap stations. I think it was the other one. I think it was the third brand, which was Firefly. I think Onvo is supposed to have the same, at least function with the latest generations of the current Neo power swap stations. But yeah, if you start to introduce Firefly and you need to have at least 1,000 swap station across China, maybe there's a lot of capex going on there. But still, that wouldn't. I don't think like we're gonna be at these kind of levels at 7 to 800 million a loss each quarter. I would look at between best case scenario 300, worst case scenario 500 million a loss, and that's that's much better in my opinion. So yeah, I think things start to looking really great. Hopefully these are the lows in terms of the stock price. Again, I'm not a financial expert. I'm just sharing my ideas and thoughts. It should be much less risk to the stock price at this stage. But yeah, so thank you for watching. Appreciate you putting your time into listening to my ideas, and please like the video and subscribe if you liked it. And yeah, see you in the next one.